Welcome to the Fourth Step Podcast. On each episode, we interview recovering addicts and learn their story with addiction. Through exploring personal journeys, we get a glimpse of the depths addicts fall to and their path in recovery. We hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Fourth Step Podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Hey,
I'm happy to be here.
I mean, just to get that out of the way.
Yeah.
My name's Kevin. I'm an addict.
Hi, Kevin.
And we're here with
Josh, I'm an addict.
co-host, and our guest today is...
I'm Jennifer. I'm an addict.
Hi, Jennifer.
That's a better actual intro. That's good.
Well,
Yes.
yeah. But actually, he's right. Who are you?
Yeah, tell us about yourself.
Well, if you want to know about my life today, let's see. So I have 30 years clean. And
Nice.
I got clean when I was a teenager. So I was 17 when I want to say, like, ducked into Narcotics Anonymous through treatment. And let's see. So fast forward. So today in, 2023, I'm a mom. And I am an active member of Narcotics Anonymous. I have a home group. I work steps. And I have a sponsor who actively participates in my recovery, sometimes against my better judgment. And let's see, and I have 3 kids that I've raised in recovery. They've never had to see me loaded, which is pretty cool. I always say they see me crazy sometimes, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Crazy's pretty normal.
When we were driving over here, there's a song by Seal called Crazy, and I said, this is kind of my life motto here to the kids, and they just kind of laughed like, yeah, okay, that's you. So they know me. So yeah, I'm a productive member of society. What else do I know?
What do you do for work?
What do I do for work? I work for a small nonprofit association that promotes the use of electric vehicles. It's actually a very new job. So I had a long 17-year career in healthcare that I left a couple years ago on the heels of a divorce from a very long-term marriage, and literally changed everything in my life. So I went back to school. I got a new job. Well, I got a couple new jobs in between there.
But you got to start over.
But I'm starting
Fresh
over.
start,
So
yeah.
I'm at a fresh start in my life. Yeah. So, I've been single for the last couple of years. I've been doing life with my kids. It's just me and 2 of my kids that live with me. And
How many kids do you have?
3.
Okay.
My oldest lives in Billings, Montana. She's very happy there. She's been there for the last 5 years. And I think it's really cool. I haven't left the town that I grew up in. So I think it's really cool that I raise kids that
Really?
are courageous enough.
You're still in that town?
Yeah.
Wow. You got sucked in.
I got sucked into where I am.
My sister lives in Montana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And
It's cold out there.
my daughter loves it. She hates the heat. So
Okay.
it's perfect for her.
So, to the point, yeah. So you got clean at 17? You got clean at 17, and were you just gung-ho all in right away in the program?
I came through a treatment facility where my parents did an intervention and put me in a locked down facility. They didn't know what else to do with me. Looking back now, I get it. Of course, I was very angry back then and, a victim, and you did this to me, and it's your fault that I get loaded and blah, 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 blah.
Normal stuff for teenagers.
Yeah. And then on top of it, a teenager that's an addict, right? So just, times 100.
Can I ask about that lockdown facility?
Sure.
Sure. Where was it? What was it called?
It was called Starting Point, and it was in Orangevale, California on Oak Avenue.
Okay.
It's actually a assisted living facility now, for the elderly. And I went through there for it was a total of 45 days. I got loaded right towards the end of my 30 days, and then
In the facility?
somebody snuck in some meth and
Party time.
in a dental floss thing. Yeah, I mean, we're sneaky, we're good.
Geniuses.
And actually, that's the first time, when I talk about that, I talk about that moment of clarity that we get sometimes. And, I was telling this girl, I was like, I'll be the watch out, right, in the room. And everybody's, doing lines on the counter in the bathroom. And I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I'm almost out of here, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, do you want to do it? And I was like, no. And up my nose it went. And it was like that moment of.
No, I don't.
Yeah, 100%. And so what happened was I had that moment where I was like, I can't not use even when I don't want to, right? Like I have to use even when I don't want
So
to.
you got loaded against your will.
Against my will.
It's a blessing to have that realization that young.
It was brutal. And it was terrifying because I was in this facility that I didn't want to be in. I didn't know how to act, right? So I ended up telling on myself, and I got an extra 15 days as a gift. And it was suggested by the facility that I stay for a little longer. And I did not know this until many, many moons later that my insurance only covered 30 days. And my mom and my stepdad took out like a big personal loan to pay.
Wow.
It took them like 5 years or 10 years or something to pay it off, to do the extra time there. So I'm super like, and
That's
I'm glad
pretty
they
heavy.
didn't say anything, until later down, because then I would have felt like, guilty and all that other stuff.
At that point, did you admit to yourself that you were an addict?
Well,
Were you convinced?
I was convinced. So when I went into the facility, I was convinced that I was an alcoholic. And, this is the way that an addict's brain works. From the first time the first drug I ever used was alcohol, and it was never, ever a good experience, ever. And so I knew, and my dad was an alcoholic, and he was sober. And, sorry, can I say that word on here?
I don't care.
Okay. Well, some people are like, no, but
No.
So my dad was in AA, and he was sober, and so I knew that I took after my dad, right? But I didn't want to. I said, well, I use drugs to counteract the alcohol because bad things were happening to me when I was drinking, and so if I could prevent those from happening, I would have control over and manage myself. I mean, clearly that didn't work out really well for me. But so I hadn't 100% gone to the place of like, I only use this because I don't want to get drunk and pass out and be vulnerable. So I think probably when I left there, I finally realized, I used it even when I didn't need to, or to use it as, a backup for something. And I went to meetings. So, I mean, I think I really knew that I needed to stop using drugs, but I didn't think that I needed to stay stopped. I hadn't gotten to that place yet.
There was a reservation.
Well, I was young.
Or more than one.
Well, I was young. I had to, I hadn't even gone to college. I mean, I didn't even finish high school, let's be real. But, I didn't get to go to frat parties, or go to a bar. I've never drank in a bar, ever.
Me neither.
Yeah. So it was all these ideas, these dreams that I had in my life. But all my dreams centered around using and drinking.
Were you, what was the relationship like with your parents before and after getting sent away? Was it damaging, that process damaging for you?
My parents divorced when I was really young. And my dad was gone for a long time because of his drinking. And he didn't come back into my life until I was 11 or something like that. And so I grew up basically with a single mother who kind of bounced in and out of relationships and marriages. And so I had a lot of difficulties with my mom, who was trying to kind of live her life that she didn't get through me, and then the absent dad, and so I was kind of a train wreck, and my mom and this has come up a lot lately in my life, where I realized that my mom choosing these men, to kind of complete herself over her kids often, and I was teasing Kevin earlier. I mean, I was kind of teasing when I told him this, but like, my mom's on marriage number 5, and so it's this constant battle of thinking that I have to have this outside thing to validate me and make me better. So there's that. And
you're saying it's somewhat ingrained in you.
It's ingrained, yeah. Or I pick people who will always pick other people or things over me, right? And so it's like that never enough thing. And
is that changing for you, or is that
she's recognizing it?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
It is changing, but because I was married for 24 years, and in that marriage, I had the same struggle of being enough, and I did more and did more and did more and did more, and clearly the problem, doing more is not the solution to the problem, but and so when that ended, I still was struggling with that being enough, and then being single and now navigating what single looks like and dating and all that other stuff. It's very prevalent in my life because it's all new and scary. And so I immediately go to what I know. So I'm doing a lot of work on that, which is, slightly uncomfortable.
Yeah, I remember.
That whole area is fucking difficult.
Yeah, early recovery, where we would talk about being very comfortable in the chaos that we know.
For sure. And I can walk into a family function at any moment and dip in to the madness. And it's like a pig in shit. You know what I mean? I'm comfortable. It's warm and squishy.
Yeah.
And I'm rolling around in it. But the difference today is very quickly, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this anymore. I'm going to step out of it. I'm going to sit over here and I'm going to watch it. I'm going to be an observer versus a participant.
Did you, when all that was going on in early recovery, did you like carry those resentments for a long time?
With my mom? Or just with the people in my life?
Yeah, your mom and
my dad.
Yeah.
I did. At the very end of my using, it was a very good tool to use against my dad because I lived with him at the end of my using. The guilt, you abandoned me, you blah, 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 blah. I'm the victim. And so I got away with a lot, which is, in some terms, I guess, I was able to end my using career maybe quicker than most.
Yeah.
But it definitely, and my mom was the hardest. She's not only my probably biggest critic.
Still to this day?
Well, my mom has some mental, her faculties are going, kind of, she's being tested for like dementia and Alzheimer's and stuff like that. And so she has no filter. So she didn't have a filter before, or she had a filter that was a little bit, but now she has no filter. So I'm at a point in my life today where I don't own anything, and our relationship's good. Like the more I work on me, the better you get. Kind of deal, so I don't, but when I was new, and even throughout the beginning of like my marriage and when I was having kids, it was this, how I'm doing it, how I'm not doing it, is my house cleaning up, is it, and so there was, it took me 18 years to even make amends to my mom for the shitty behavior that I had, because I couldn't get over the hump of the resentment until my sponsor was like, okay, we've done enough. Like, just go do it. And she's like, do this, write a script, go to a public place and do it and walk away.
Were you afraid of looking at your part in the situations that caused those resentments?
No, I was afraid of the criticism I was going to receive.
Were you over the resentments?
I'd been over the resentments for a long time, but I was so terrified that my mom was going to belittle me and just create more harm. And granted, I didn't understand that I didn't have to own that stuff. Like, people can say stuff to me today, certain people, it doesn't even affect me. And then there's people that can affect me, and for good reason, right? The safe people in my life. But now it's I don't own it, but I don't particularly try to like find it either.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to ask my mom what she thinks about my life today.
You know better. Boundaries, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that before. The people that can push your buttons the best are the ones that put the buttons there.
Correct.
Did you get sent to Starting Point voluntarily? Starting Point?
It was Starting Point.
Starting Point?
No, I got... My mom and stepdad had a minivan back in the day, a Ford Aerostar, for anybody that's old enough to remember those. One of the very first minivans. And they hogtied me and threw me in the back of the minivan.
No way. Did they really?
Oh, they really did. I refused. I was in juvenile hall a couple of days before my intervention. And then my mom came and picked me up. And as we were driving down Highway 12 from Solano County back to Rio Vista, which is where my using ended, I jumped out of the car and hitchhiked home. And so she was planning on bringing me back to my dad's to do the intervention. And anyway, it was a whole thing. So by the time I got there, I was already angry and frustrated, and I hadn't gotten high in a couple of days. And all I wanted to do was get back to the house and get high. And there was my dad, my stepmom, my stepdad, my mom, my stepbrothers. It was a whole thing. And yeah, so I was physically taken to treatment. And then again, it was a lockdown facility. You could leave. If you left, there were alarms on the door. Then the sheriffs got called, and you'd be either taken back there or go to juvenile hall again. So, essentially I was forced.
They literally hogtied you.
Literally hogtied me. And nobody believes me, and I swear it's
That's
true.
Awesome.
I was angry. I was rebellious. I did not want anybody telling me how to live my life or what to do. Like, I had it out under control.
That's crazy.
I had the reason I ask about was it voluntary and like resentments in that area and stuff is I definitely believe you. I experienced a very similar situation as a child, and I get zip tied and thrown in the back of a Ford Taurus.
Okay.
I had transporters come get me. And so like I remember very vividly that whole process and the resentments that I held for how long I held them until like I was able to realize like they probably did the best they could. Parents took out a loan, like all that stuff is very relatable.
Yeah, I don't know if I was probably resentful when I was in treatment, but once I actually started participating in a recovery process, those resentments went away very quickly because I realized they had no idea what to do with me. Zero. Like this was the last house on the block before they were just going to discard me. I think they were trying to get me to 18 so they didn't have to be financially or, any kind of responsibility for that because I was a mess and I was making a mess everywhere.
You can relate to all that now that you have your own kids.
I can.
Yeah, I remember growing up and one of my parents would say like, just wait until you have kids.
And they weren't kidding.
Right? Yeah. Damn it.
And, and while the struggle was different, I went through this process with my oldest daughter with her mental health. And it was in and out of mental facilities. There's 5 of them, 5 times, in her later teens or 15 to 17. And, I was so frustrated at the end. I can't even imagine if she had been using on top of that, but I was so frustrated at the end because I couldn't find the right help for her. And I felt like a failure that I told the doctors, I said, she cannot come home. She every time she comes home, we're back in the same thing. I said, I have 2 little kids at home that I'm trying to raise. And it literally ripped my heart out. It was the hardest thing I've ever done to say, I don't know how to take care of my kid and I need you to figure out how to do it. And that experience of me letting go and like trusting, my higher power to say, okay, like you've got to take this over because I'm not doing a good job at this. Ended up with her in a 90-day program, and she came out of that 90-day program, and not only has she did intensive therapy and all that stuff after that, but she totally like pulled her head out of her ass. Whatever she had going on, she worked it out there, and since then, she's been fucking amazing.
Yeah, I have a similar experience with my daughter too. But let me ask you, when you were going through that with her in the beginning, did you have the fear for her that what happened to you as a teenager? Did you carry that over into that situation?
I used to carry that. I used to attach my disease to my kids to where I thought that they were going to end up to be like me. And while, her addiction at the time was self-harm and, binging and purging and things like that. It's the same thought process. There's still mental issue, the disease that was going on in your head. And so I did attach the idea that, oh my gosh, I'm going to end up with, having to 12-step my kid or having somebody 12-step my kid. And mostly with my first, I think, because you have less knowledge there, By the time of the other 2, it's been a little different, but it's definitely, I think it's a very scary thing for addicts that are parents that they have zero desire for their kids to ever live the life they live. Like there are some people in this world that like had great childhoods and went to school and have great careers. And they're like, yes, I want you to follow my path. It's like, Please do the opposite of what I did. Please.
I think that holds true for like anybody in the program with kids.
100%.
Yeah. I had that same fear when 2 of my kids kind of dipped into that atmosphere that I grew up in. And I had that same fear, like, oh my God. And I like totally attached that to the outcome of what's going on with them.
Yeah, my disease automatically means that they're going to have, they're going to have my disease. And, my middle daughter is 19 and, she drinks sometimes. It's like, it's a sometime thing. I'm like, what do you do sometimes? You know what I mean? Of course, it obviously is illegal, but I mean, I don't know any teenager, well, at least not in my world, that hasn't at least tried it before. But anyways, like she dabbles and she dabbled in some other stuff when she was younger. And she's like this, productive member of society, and she goes to work, and you know what I mean? And she pays me rent. And, and then my youngest son is 17, and you know what the truth is he's a stoner. He just is. But not like I think about it in my head. It's like, okay, well, you smoke weed sometimes. Okay. But guess what? He's going to graduate high school this year.
Yeah.
Guess what I didn't do?
Right?
Yeah, they're doing normal people shit.
He's doing normal. And listen, like, I still get afraid sometimes, but 99% of the time, I've stopped attaching my disease to them because it just makes me a bad parent. You know, it does. It makes me this controlling, uptight, ridiculous parent. And I'll tell you one thing, at least with my son. Now, granted, we're always, by the time you're done with your last one, you're exhausted. But I've given him this autonomy to do what he wants to do, barring anything radical happening. You follow these rules. You're going to graduate high school and you're going to do the chores that I tell you to do. If I tell you to do the dishes. You know what I mean? Like, take the garbage out, mow the lawn, blah, 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 whatever it is. You have the autonomy to live your life the way you choose within reason. And as long as you follow the guidelines that we have at home, we're good. And it's actually been the best experience I had. I learned that here, by the way, in Narcotics Anonymous. And we've had to pull that away. And I'd say, okay, you've lost that for a time being until you can figure out how to, And like I told him last week, end of the trimester for school, you have this F in art. Get the F up or you lose your privileges. Period. End of story. Like, it's not like a question. And he's like, okay. So I checked his grades. He's got A's, B's, and C's. Because he likes his freedom, right? And at 17, you should be afforded some freedom.
You spent time in juvenile hall as a kid?
Mm-hmm. Just a very short amount of time, but it was enough to be unpleasant.
Yeah. Did you have that fear that maybe your kids... I only say that because I spent some years in and out of juvenile hall, and I know Josh had trouble as well with incarceration, and I projected that onto my kids.
I projected on my middle. She's feisty. She's been, she got suspended a few times for fighting at school. So I was always worried that she was going to get in an altercation with somebody and end up getting arrested. I repeatedly remind her now at 19 that being arrested means you go to jail, and that's a whole different ball game. I think she's calmed down a little bit, but she definitely has a temper on her. And so I remember telling her when she was younger, like, you can't just beat somebody up anymore, especially in this day and age, right? I know there was a time where that was like, you beat each other up, somebody wins, we're done, respect, we're over.
And they're best friends forever.
And then you're right. And so, like, this is like jumping people at football games, or let's not do that, And so she's calmed down a lot, but I was always afraid that she would be the one that would either like just get beat up really bad and end up in the hospital, or like end up in juvenile hall for her bad behavior. Do
your kids know your story?
Yeah, for the most part.
There's stuff you ever hold back from them?
I think a lot of probably my sexual promiscuity, I try not to bring up. I think I don't want them to see their mom like that. It's weird enough now after their entire life to see their mom like single and dating.
Right.
So I've been, but I mean, I try not to have them, if they don't go to meetings with me anymore, because, why would they want to do that? But when they were younger, if they would go to meetings with me, if I was speaking at the meeting, I wouldn't have them come, right? Because, telling some of my experience. But they know about, what kind of drinker I was. They know what kind of drugs I did. They know where I ended up and how I got there and how I got to NA. So they know the general story. Cool. The details aren't necessarily important. But they were, and this is a funny story, I was at a camp out 3 weeks ago, a month ago, with Joel W. And my youngest and my son went with me, and we were in our camp out, and these newcomers came up, and they were going to do like s'mores or something with the other people that were at our campsite. And this newcomer had 30 or 60 days, and it's a guy, and he was a younger guy, and Aiden walks up to him, and they start talking, and Aiden hugs him, and they're like talking program stuff, right? So like I walk up to Aiden. Your son
that's not in the program has been around long enough.
Yeah. And he's almost like
pretty cool.
He's almost like 12 step with this guy, like kind of like talking to him about, meetings, and asking him if he's going to meetings and stuff. And I just was laughing. And so I walk up to him and I put my arm around him. I'm like, this is my 17-year-old son. And the guy was like, oh, really? Because he looks like a big man now, And so it was interesting. And I had at least 3 or 4 people like walk up to me at some point and say, like, you raised a really good young man, and he's very articulate. And I'm like, yeah, he's, spouting the program off to a newcomer.
Yeah, that's amazing what we can do after some time in the program, what we can do with setting the example for our kids.
Yeah, and I didn't think about I didn't think he was paying attention. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think you think they're paying attention, but clearly they are.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
No, that is killer. Like my phone plan has my son, my youngest son, on there, and I get an alert if his phone calls 911. It automatically comes to me.
Yeah.
So like, first thought wrong. My first thought was, what the hell is he doing?
What did he do? Yeah.
What? Oh my God, he's in some trouble. And and I started checking with him, and at first he says, yeah, somebody was, like crashed on the side of the road. So we pulled over to help them, and I called 911. And everything's great. The cops are on the way, a tow truck, ambulance, whatever. And he was just being a good Samaritan. He's just helping people out, man.
Listen, at my son's age at 17, I was just getting clean. It would have never even occurred to me to be a good Samaritan.
Right.
Never occurred to me.
I know.
Where did you start using that? Like, where did it all? Let's touch on
My beginnings.
yeah.
Well, I remember the first time my best friend, Heather, I was in 5th grade and we started smoking cigarettes on the side of my house. When
Where'd
my
you
mom,
get the cigarettes at?
Her parents. So her parents were the cool parents that sat out in those lawn chairs in the garage and smoked and drank beer out of the fridge. They had a fridge in the garage. With those old lawn chairs with the strips.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Just watch cars drive by and talk shit.
And they lived on this court, and so, but you could see the main street, and the court was like up the street from my house, right? I lived in this little neighborhood where we all went to the same school and stuff, and so she stole some of her mom's cigarettes, and we sat on the side of my house and smoked, and that head rush that you get, I started chasing that, and then shortly after that, I went to a slumber party, and so the first time I ever drank was warm sake at a birthday party where we ended up apparently going skinny dipping. I don't remember much of it. And then I was the girl that passed out, and they put shaving cream, and on my hand and draw on my face and put my bra in the freezer. And, I think I was in 6th grade, like 12, but,
Crazy.
from that point, it ignited that I want to feel like that again. I didn't think about the consequence of like passing out or,
Right.
being made fun of or skinny dipping, which apparently I did. I don't remember. But, and that's kind of where like, whatever you want to call the humble beginnings were, and then it was chasing, stealing my stepdad's alcohol in the morning and drinking it before school and middle school. And, everybody took turns stealing from their parents. Oh, we'll just take a couple beers, or, oh, we'll just, take this bottle that only has a little bit left. And there was this dead end at the end of our school for a street, and we'd all meet there and smoke on the way to school. And I was kind of where it started. And then, the next thing you know, I'm in Ripon, California, working at a carnival, been up for 5 days.
You were a carny?
I was.
No way, really?
Oh, yes.
That's awesome.
Oh, well,
Carnies
that was cool.
always had like,
The good stuff.
oh yeah.
Yeah, because they moved around, yeah.
Having done some work, looking back, did you see like, can you see now like, oh, I was a drug addict way before the drugs?
Oh, yeah. I look at my life, there's such polar opposites. Like prior to using, my mom was very adamant about doing well in school. My mom was adamant about being perfect, actually, which is a huge defect of mine, which is kind of where I'm never good enough is because I'm not perfect. And so I excelled. I played 3 sports. I swam. I played, softball. I did swimming. I got straight A's almost all. I'm smart. I'm really intelligent. And I've known that. President's Awards. Honor roll, all that stuff. But it was just like, it was just never enough at my house. It was never enough. If I wasn't doing well enough in school, I had gained a couple pounds and my mom felt the need to tell me about it. Or I was eating too much, or I was, my room wasn't clean enough, or I hadn't read enough books, or
Is that, you think that not good enough is where the attachment to the release of like something like drinking for that first time came?
Like I just didn't care. Yeah, I didn't have to care. The thing about it didn't matter.
Found an escape.
It didn't matter what I used. It was that once I did, I didn't worry about that anymore. Like that was not my focus anymore. And it was, I think for me, the painful part of growing up in that kind of environment was it was a two-part thing. It was one, let's be perfect. Everything needs to look good. You need to be good. You need to do well. And then the second part of that was, even if we're not doing well, we're still going to look good and we're not going to talk about it. Right. So you can't, my mom was very adamant about not telling people what was really going on. And our dysfunction. And so it didn't matter. We didn't talk about my dad being a drunk and being absent. We didn't talk about, her second husband who, beat her up, we just didn't talk about those things. And so it became this process of, we're the perfect little family. We wear our little dresses to church on Sunday, and my cute little white patent shoes and my, all that stuff. And
very common for families in that
for
era.
Sure. And
my family too.
Yeah, I mean, this is in this is in the 80s, and even when like my mom didn't have money and because she was the single mom, my grandma was making us dresses that looked like we were fancy, and we'd go over there and go grocery shopping at my grandma's house, and she'd say or we'd go to Sears because my grandpa worked at Sears and retired, and so my grandma got like a 30% discount, and so my brother could get his Tough Skins and all that other stuff. So it was that's kind of like what it was like growing up. On top of the fact that I don't care what anybody says, in the 80s we were feral children. My mom would kick us out on a Sunday and be like, I don't care where you go, but you ain't staying here because I've had enough and I'm tired. It's been a long week and I'm going to clean the house and I'm going to have some peace and quiet. My brother and I were riding our bikes. I lived on the American River, man. We were riding our bikes to the river and almost drowning on the regular and bringing home frogs and riding the bike trail. And we didn't go home unless we were hungry.
Yeah. Is there like one of your favorite stories of early recovery or early using or anytime using that you'd be willing to share, like something crazy without incriminating yourself?
So I don't have to incriminate myself. So I was like maybe 14 or 15 and I got invited to this really fun like grown-up party. Like everybody was technically over 21. And my friend that I went to school with, it was his older brother that was hosting the party at his house. And his brother was 21. And he invited me to the party. And so I got to go to this really cool party with all these people that were older. And, they had the cool feathered hair. And you know what I mean? And like all the things that I wanted. And so the crazy part, the party was fun. I learned what Jungle Juice was. I learned when Jungle Juice in recovery is very different than Jungle Juice, when you're using. It's not full of energy drinks, but had a lot of that, did not understand the level of alcohol that was in that, and ended up sleeping with this guy, my friend's brother, and then like stayed there for 3 days and disappeared off the face of the earth. Now, I had a great time in my head. I don't think everybody else appreciated my stay. They didn't know how to get rid of me, and my parents were worried about me. But like I got to stay with grown-ups, and that was like the coolest experience in my head. Now looking back, that's some fucked up shit. You know what I mean?
One, he was 21.
And he was 21. I was 15, maybe 16. I don't know. I can't remember 15 or 16, but it was, for me, I felt a part of, and I felt important, and I felt, even for all the wrong reasons, I felt wanted. I felt,
Right.
But that specific event in the beginning was very fun. Granted, I dragged it out and it turned into be this whole thing where they had to like kick me out. But I thought I was the coolest thing since sliced bread back then. So anyway, if we're talking about recovery, well, I think that the thing about Narcotics Anonymous is, and I may have still been in treatment or right after I got out of treatment, I was at a Tuesday night meeting called Without Parallel. And I don't want to say this is fun, but it was a memorable, probably significant, the most significant moment in the early recovery was I didn't know how to relate to any other human being. I didn't know how to relate to people. I didn't know, especially because everybody was so much older than I was in NA, right? And so everybody, and I was always the girl that was willing to give away herself to get whatever I needed. And so I came in with the same thought process as I'm just here to go find somebody that's going to, take care of me, right? I'm going to go find a man. And so I'm in a meeting, have a cup of coffee, and I spill this cup of coffee. And of course, I'm embarrassed. I'm new. I don't know where to get anything to clean it up. There were these two guys, Hollis H. and Jeff W., and they went to this meeting all the time, and they both kind of were like, it's okay. Like, I'm, they could clearly see I was freaking out.
17-year-old young girl.
Right.
New.
Right. But I was freaking out, and they walked up and they said, we'll clean it up. Don't worry about it. Let us get you another cup of coffee, like whatever. Just go sit down. And they did all of that. And they never asked anything of me. They never said, I owe you anything. And in my head, I was like, why is everybody being so nice to me? It must, what am I going to have to give away, right? I don't know if I can give away all that clean. I don't know how to do, I have to be loaded to do that. And I ended up spending the first couple years of my recovery at their house with a whole bunch of other addicts doing pay-per-view boxing, pay-per-view wrestling. It was like the hangout. You'd go over there after a meeting, you'd drink really terrible coffee, and you'd hang out on the patio and you'd smoke. And up until, Jeff passed away and Hollis is still around, like, they showed me that I didn't have to be here. I didn't have to be anything or be anybody to be here.
Right.
And that was the first time I had experienced that clean, and I'd never experienced that loaded. So
That's pretty heavy.
yeah, that was pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah,
So you're like, how many years clean do you have?
30.
30. Oh, duh. I was at your party.
Triple X.
Yeah. So you're out of a relationship long term.
Mm-hmm. 27 years. I was 24 married, 27 years together. Yeah.
Yeah, and your kids are almost out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got how many more years left
Less than a year.
until they're gone?
Well, I don't know if they'll be gone.
Yeah.
But they'll be adults.
Yeah, right. And so is this a shift in your life right now?
I think it's been a huge shift the last couple of years. And then on top of that, when you have kids that are, other than whether they need food or money, that's pretty much it, or a ride, they don't really need you, you know? So I have a lot of freedom that I didn't have. And it's a catch-22. It's nice to be able to do what I want when I want and say, hey, I'm going out to a meeting tonight. I'll probably go out to dinner. I have no idea when I'm going to be home, and make sure the dog gets fed, right? I always, like, y'all are cool. Just make sure, I'll call. Even if I go out of town, I'll call and be like, let me see Louie. That's our dog.
Yeah.
Let me see that he's okay. Let me see that he's fed. Like, I know you guys are fine. So yeah, it's been a shift. And then to think about my son graduating from high school and not having even that responsibility of, like, you got to get up and you got to go to school, and being on you about your grades is even weirder, because literally for 24 years I've been raising kids. So it's a long freaking time. Mm-hmm. And so that shift of being a mom of adult children on top of all of this freedom is strange.
And has that affected your program? Have you put more into your program now that you have more time?
Yes and yes. So there are times where it's very stifling when I'm home alone and I don't know what to do with myself. And so then I get stuck at the house. Like, I'll be watching Netflix for 4 or 5 times and not know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
But not recently, but I've more and more been practicing going to different meetings.
Nice.
Showing up different places, more activities, in and out of the program, but usually with people in the program. But the one thing I've done the last couple of years is I've traveled more than I have in my entire life.
The freedom that you've gotten.
Yeah, like, I in March I was in India for 10 days. Like,
Doing what? Hanging out?
I got to go with a friend that got invited to participate in a panel at a university in India, and called me and said, I got invited to go, do this thing, and do you want to go? And I said, hell yeah, I want to go. Like, I don't even know the first thing about how to do it. We researched flights. It was very last minute, so it was like we only had like 6 weeks to prep. And the Recovery's off, afforded me a passport that I already had, that I just, I had to, get a tiny little e-visa for India. It cost me $30, and do a little research and pack a couple suitcases and get on a plane for, 13 hours. And the next thing you know, there's a driver there to pick us up and off we go.
That's
And
crazy. And you've been traveling around for the other podcast that you do too.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
correct?
yeah. So
Hey, you want to plug them?
I do. It's
Yes.
called the Anonymous Podcast.
Love
And,
it.
Yeah, we do daily check-ins and we do weekly literature studies, and so you can find us on Apple, Spotify, or Google Play.
Nice.
And and we have a Facebook page as well. It's the anonpodcast.com, I think, but you can just look it up on Facebook and search it. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, good. I was thinking about when you were going through all of that time with the breakup, the divorce, and I was there with you going
Oh, yeah.
through there, experiencing your emotions and all that. Is that I watched a change in you. Is that something that you like reach back and use that experience?
I do. It's a very good place for me to look back at and see where I was and where I am today. It also puts me in a place to realize that I'm capable of a lot more than I give myself credit for. It's for the first time in my adult life, I have a home that's in my name. You know what I mean? Like everything that I had prior to, since I've been clean has always been with somebody else. So
Yeah.
this independence thing, which is very foreign to me, and while I'm completely capable, I didn't think I was, which is part of the reason, that kind of kept me, I don't want to say stuck because that's not the right word, but maybe it is the right word, stuck where I was. And I didn't think that I could do anything on my own. And I've been doing it for a little over 2 years, and it's been amazing. It's been absolutely amazing. It's hard and exhausting sometimes. And, I have my kids, my 19 and my 17-year-old live with me full time. And so they're like, I always laugh. They're always there. It's like, even though they're grown, they're always there, but for the most part, but it's been an amazing experience, and it's been a difficult shift for them too. So like being the parent to show up and be present, which I at the beginning of the divorce, I couldn't, I was totally checked out, but like being able to kind of rein it in and pull myself together enough to be like, okay, like how can I help you get through this and what can I do?
Have you done a round of steps since then?
I have.
A full round in the last couple of years?
I did a full round in October of 21, shortly after I separated from my ex-husband, and I was all on relationships, and then currently I'm doing a set of Al-Anon steps and a set of ACA steps. I don't know, simultaneously. I'm not sure that was the wisest thing for me to do, but
Sounds like a lot.
I have sponsees that are both doing them, and I hadn't done these books, and I'm not a sponsor that works steps with people that I haven't done before. So
Yeah.
What program are you like? So ACA, Al-Anon, Narcotics Anonymous, where is your home at?
Well, my home's Narcotics Anonymous, right? The issues that I suffer from today are appropriate for, if they had Nar-Anon where we were, I would go to Nar-Anon, but it exists, but it doesn't necessarily exist here. And my sponsor has a lot of Al-Anon background, so she was the first one to say, hey, you need to do this. And this is when I was married. And I was like, I don't need to do this. I don't have that problem. So anyways, I'm beyond that. And so while those are the steps that I'm doing now, it's not the program that I call my home base. It's just something different, different issue areas, different issues of my life that I have to work through. And the ACA is really a lot about being enough and why I'm not enough and how can I get past this idea that I have to.
You deal a lot with the childhood and ACA, right?
Yeah.
It's adult children of alcoholics, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's literally my life growing up.
We have a couple close common friends that branched out into that for a little while, and it reading some of the literature, I looked into some of it. I went to a couple of meetings, and
deep.
it's a lot. It's intensive.
It's not, but the 12 steps are the 12 steps, right? Like I have a home, I've done Narcotics Anonymous steps, umpteen times. It's not, But it really has come over the years for me to be very open-minded about where I receive my help from. And if I'm going to receive help from that, then I just need to be willing to do what it is, no matter what it is, whether it's, outside therapy or if
I
it's...
was just going to ask that.
Yeah.
Have you dabbled in therapy too?
Off and on over the years. I did a big, I think 3 or 4 months right after my divorce of, some intense work that I did with a therapist, and no, I'm not. I'm not well enough to not go, and I go. It's not something like I don't have a regular therapist that I go to, and I kind of when things come up, I tend to deal with the issue at hand. But if I felt like I needed that, then I would do it.
How did you go about finding your therapist?
Well, it was actually, so, we were still in COVID, right? So I learned, somebody told me about this online service that, that I could pay through like a health savings account that I had through work at the time. So I did it, and it was I got to kind of, like, you go through like whatever it is that you want to work through, and then they kind of give you this choice of, we have these therapists that we'd like you to look at their information and their bios and whatever. And I picked this lady, and she was fantastic. Not only was she like super, I don't know, like detail oriented, which I guess is their job, right? But on top of that, it was like really good at actually holding me accountable for things that I either said I was going to do or I wasn't going to do. And I was meeting with her every week. And so
Nice.
It was like one of those things like being in school where you're like, well, I better get my homework done. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. Cause I want to please you and I want you to approve of me. So, but it was a really good experience for me when I was in the middle of my divorce, where I didn't go out and hide per se. I really kind of dug in, and like my circle got real small, and I kind of stopped doing certain things, which was like putting myself out there and being really vulnerable because I didn't feel safe. But I had my people, and then really delving into steps. I did a set of steps in like 16 weeks. It was just this weekly thing where I was meeting with this person every week and doing these steps, and it was really simple, and it was really, I don't want to say basic, but it was really simple, right? It was dealing with these issues, it was dealing with these things, and it was kind of like necessary for me to just dig in and like, okay, like how do I walk through this somewhat gracefully?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've heard before, but NA literature tells us that sometimes we have to
for
seek
sure.
outside help. So I once we get past that stigma of like, oh my God, like NA or AA or whatever your A is,
right?
That's the only solution. When we get past that stigma, then man, everything else opens up.
Well, we can't pigeonhole ourselves into something, right? Because you back me into a corner, and I'm gonna not do well.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, I think when you talk about that is like, there's a lot of things that, if you would have told me 20 years ago, I'd have been like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a therapist. I'm not, you know what I mean? So like in any realm where it comes to giving advice, that could be detrimental to any area of your life, your mental health, your any legal problems that you're having, any medical problems that you're having.
Seek the professional.
Seek the professional.
Yeah, we're all pretty fucked up. So like sometimes it's really good just to get like clinical information or feedback.
Yeah, I don't need the NA doctors telling me, you know what I mean, like how to deal. I don't need the NA therapist telling me how to deal with my mental health. I don't need a member of Narcotics Anonymous to tell me I don't get to take prescription meds after I have a major surgery. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or that I got loaded because, they gave me medication after I had a cesarean section with my baby. I'm like, go get your belly cut open and have a baby taken out of it. And then talk to me about what you can and can't take. It's like those kind of areas are so dangerous, especially in the mental health realm.
But you've learned that those opinions are irrelevant.
Correct.
Because they're not in your program.
Right.
Yeah.
I do think they're harm. I think we ought be very careful as long-term members who we tell what about. Like I had this sponsee years and years ago, tons of mental health issues, and she would call me on some mania and not be able to really articulate her thoughts and telling me about her 4-step. And I'm like, we are not working a 4-step right now. I'm not doing a 5th step with you. You go consult your therapist and your psychiatrist. And when you get right, you call me and let me know, because I'm not going to be the one having you jump off a bridge because I did a 5th step with you when you're off your meds. You know what I mean? Like, it's not my job to do that. And And I learned that, you know, with a lot of help, but it was like I started at some point telling her, you know, you need to take your meds, you need to do this. And, oh no, I don't. You need to go consult with the professionals, and then we'll check back in after you get right.
It's a really,
Talk about feelings.
touchy process, that area, because it's so different for each individual person and
Exactly.
different sponsor, different doctors. Like there's so much gray area for each individual person. Like your sponsor's experience might be, that's a bad fucking idea.
Right.
You have a different sponsor and be like, dude, medication saved my life. And then you go to the doctor because he said it's a good idea to go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, no, you need this, 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 and this. And then you're on 10 different meds or pain meds, or like there's
Right.
so much wiggle room in so many different areas.
Well, the one thing I have learned about being a sponsor, and then I've learned from having a sponsor long term, which is, you know, not for everybody. I know people change sponsors when they feel like they want to do a new round of steps. I've had the same sponsor for 27 years. And the one the fantastic thing about that is almost anything I talk to her about, A, she already knows about me, right? You know, like there's no surprises.
Yeah.
And B, she really can identify, like, am I, you know, like when I started going to therapy, like I don't have any way to help you with this. You know what I mean? Like she's very good at saying, I know all of these things about you, but I don't know what the solution is. I only know how to program you. And so, you know, go see a therapist or go see a medical doctor, or, you know, I don't have any experience with that. You know, maybe you could talk to so-and-so, or, you know, whatever. You know, my sponsor doesn't have any kids, you know, but she's a teacher by profession. She's a retired teacher. And so a lot of times she would say, like, I don't have any, I don't know how to help you with this. You know what I mean? Because I don't have any kids, and I know, but I have plenty of people in my life that do.
You have the best sponsor in the world?
I have the best sponsor in the world. And I think that anybody that's listening to this, if you do not have the best sponsor in the world, go find it. Go find whoever that is.
It's interesting that you talk about having your sponsor for long term. You know, for being clean for a large amount of years, I've really kind of like not listened to those that use that as a badge of honor.
Okay.
It's just a fact, right? You've had your sponsor for so many years.
Right.
That's your path, right?
Right.
And then there's some people that have had a sponsor for 5 years, and they got another one for another 2 years, and then
Right.
you know, there are some people that use that as a badge of honor, and that it's all the same. It's like there is no, the anonymity tells us that doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. And I'll say, even outside of my sponsor, that set of steps that I worked when I first was in the middle of my divorce was with somebody else. And my sponsor knows that.
Yeah.
And I just said, this person does these specific steps this way. I know this about him, and I want to do this, and I just wanted to let you know. And she's like, perfect. Go do what you need to do.
You said you worked feeling steps?
I've done feeling steps, yeah.
Is that what it was?
No, that was not
You worked it
feeling
around
steps.
relationships.
It was around relationships.
Yeah.
It was very based in the original AA steps, you know, with an NA twist. And I'll tell you, when I got clean, there were more people that had worked out of the big book than had out of the basic text in 1992, you know, just because we had to adapt and we only had the basic text, and there was so much other literature. And over the years, we've been very fortunate to get more and more literature, but there was the Just for Today meditation book that had just come out and the basic text. And those were the two pieces of literature that we had. And so a lot of what I did in the beginning was adapted from the big book and translated into the basic text, where we worked it the same way, but you read both the literature, both the basic text and the big book, just so you knew how to work those set of steps. And it was the original, you know, you do the columns and all of that other stuff. I still have that step work, by the way, in a binder.
Did you really?
Yeah, that I stole from my brother.
3 columns or 4 columns?
I want to say 4. I want to say it's 4. They were done on binder paper, and it's this hot pink binder that says, my brother, it says Chris W. Social Studies, and then whatever period in high school. So I stole my brother's high school binder to work I mean, you know.
You ever buy him a new one? Make amends to that?
No, I'm sure I've apologized at some point.
I burn mine or throw them away. Every time I finish a step, that paper is gone.
That's interesting.
I don't ever want to see it again.
Now, see, my sponsor has saved all of her stuff. And so when we started doing step work together, I had done a round. And then she started me in this workbook. And she kept all her workbooks. And so she would read her answers with me. So I would read mine, or she would, in the beginning, she would read hers first because I was super nervous about,
Yeah.
telling her all my stuff. And
That's
so
cool.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
So that's what I do with my sponsees now, which is why when like these 2 books that I'm doing with my 2 of my sponsees, like they both have long-term recovery. But like because I read my answers with my sponsees, it's like I have to do the book first of all, and I'm not going to, again, like I said, I'm not going to work a book with you that I have no knowledge about.
Yeah.
Do you read? Is your answer the most recent set of steps, or just do you pick one at random? Or
Well, no. So I have different workbooks over the years that I've done that are 12-step based, but not like necessarily NA. And so like some of them's like a woman's way through the 12 steps, right? Like some of that kind of stuff where I work with them. And so I've done all of those with my sponsor and I've done several, I've done the step working guide several times and all this other stuff, but I tend to reach a little bit outside of that to deal with maybe some issues that women have, or, to deal with different areas, or some digs a little deeper, some just touches the surface. Like, I had the one sponsee that was having problems staying clean, and she had a relapse, and, she'd get 30 or 90 days or 6 months, and then she'd relapse again. And so for 2 years, I just kept saying, we were doing this one book, and then that was right before she got clean, and she's been clean for a while. And after I said, let's just do this book that's like these really simple questions. Let's get you through a 1 and a 12, 1 to 12, and then we can move on and dig deep with whatever the issues that you have going on. But let's talk about you being powerless over drugs, right? We'll leave the rest till later. Let's get you clean.
Keep it simple to start.
Yes.
we just talked about. I just got a new sponsee last night, and we briefly touched on that in the parking lot. I asked him, what does he think about step working guide or a good place to start? And as I said that, my first thought is this packet. Like we have a packet that we kind of pass around, and it's so much simpler and more direct. Like
Step working guide is
a
deep.
4-step is 15 questions instead of 60 or whatever. The first step is
Like
10.
60, is it 68 questions in the first step, or 69 or something like that?
I think
Crazy.
it's more than that. And the first step's got like 70 or 80
Does it?
questions. Yeah.
Yeah, the 4th step in the step working guide is 85 questions.
That's the 4th step?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah, see,
And it's 15 in that packet.
if you would have handed me a step working guide in my first round of steps, I would have ran away. And
Yeah.
listen, I'm not bashing the step working guide because I've done it, but it is not a place to start for me. With anybody that I'm working with that's new, it's like, no, we're not. It's
Some
just,
people do great with it.
They do,
It's like
but
the
some people-
structure. They feel like it's homework, or they can see it all. Like, okay, and they write it all out, and it's organized and safe.
Yes, and on the flip side of that, I will say that if that's the only set of steps that you've ever done, that maybe you should branch out a little bit. It's just my opinion, and do some different work, because it is a great resource. And again, for me, it came in, I don't even know when it was published, but I had probably 10 years clean when it, I had already done all of these steps. Tell me when it was. You have it in front of you.
There's so much more available than just the step working guide.
Right. And we get
Yeah.
stuck, right? We're like, well, this is NA approved literature. This is what we have. This is what we do. And it's like, well, what do you think we did before that came?
I know
98.
I know
Huh?
98.
98. Okay, yeah. So I had 6 years clean.
I know sponsorship families that won't touch that book, but they're only stuck in, we read the basic text and we highlight and then we talk about it. They don't even write anything.
Oh, yeah.
It's just they sit down and have a conversation, and that's working steps to them.
Everybody's different.
Yeah.
There's all kinds
don't
of
knock it.
recovery.
And there's a bunch of people in that's a big family, and they're all clean.
Yeah, well, and there's a big family that does those feeling steps, and that's
Yeah.
what they do. And I don't knock that either. I guess
Get in where you fit in.
what's been really, what I've been fortunate, and on the Anonymous podcast, we've been reading out of the It Works How and Why. We've been talking, we're on the 11th step right now. One of the things it talks about is how we have a very eclectic, at the end of working through an 11th step and trying to find what works for us with prayer meditation, we end up with this very eclectic way of doing things.
Yeah.
And so that's how I translate my step work. I have a very eclectic and different way of doing steps based on who I'm working with, right? If I have a sponsee that has issues with their mom like I did, I have a couple workbooks that I've done that are helpful.
Do you talk to your sponsees about the abuse that you went through? Do you share that stuff?
Often I do. Yeah. It depends on who it is. Like I don't, I just recently started sponsoring you, you know what I mean? I'm like, let's get to know each other.
Yeah.
I have a couple, maybe 3 sponsees that I actually talk to on the regular where it is more of a relationship. And I don't want to say sponsees are unequal, but on this equal basis where we're both giving and receiving as much as we are from the
Absolutely.
other. And so often when I'm working with newer people, there's a level of they need me and I need them, right? And that's how it works. There's a lot of reciprocity in that with giving back. But on a level of, it's not me helping you, it's us working together or us having a conversation where you're helping me sometimes more than I'm helping you and vice versa. It's kind of different. So I have a couple gals that I check in with on the regular, sometimes daily, depending on what's going on with me or them. You know, and recently over the last couple years, I mean, I'm talking to my sponsor more than I did for the 5 years before that. And thank God she's retired. But, and now she has kind of her own, and this is the cool thing. So my sponsor's about the same age as my mom, right? And I didn't realize this when I picked her, but she's really subconsciously, right. She's really been kind of this tie to, kind of being like my NA mom. Right. Like she and the way that she approaches me. And the thing about having a sponsor for as long as I have is that all of many of the things that I've gone through in recovery, she's already gone through. So, you know, she's, you know, with her marriage, she started doing Al-Anon steps based
Perfect.
on, right. Perfect for me. When her mother-in-law died, you know, working through that, when her mom died, you know, so by the time my dad was sick and dying, I had this resource that I didn't even know I was going to get. And I'm not saying it's good that people's parents die or we have problems in our marriages, life. But that's life, right? And so every time I have this issue pop up in my life, it's like somehow she's either gone through it or has some wisdom,
therapeutic value.
And so it's never occurred to me that I need to find somebody else because I don't have anybody that I can call other than a couple friends that have known me since I was clean that I can like really come up with some kind of story. And she's like, that's bullshit. You know what I mean? Or like, she always says this, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Like, we? She's like, yeah, I'm going to help you not do that. What do you mean we? I'm the one doing it. But, you know, it's like, it's a great idea until it comes out of my mouth. And then I'm like, oh.
I like the fact that you said, you know, like, kind of like your mom.
Well, she gave me a book for my 30th recovery birthday that it's The Language of Letting Go. It's an Al-Anon thing. And on the inside, it said, you know, to the daughter I never had. And I was like, oh.
Damn.
You know, and how much wisdom she had gotten from the book and how important it was that she thought that I have it. And so it's like, wow, okay. You know, and so, you know, while I often have felt rejected and less than with my mom over the last, you know, my entire life, basically, like there's this woman who has no, you know, maternal, you know, she's not my mom and still feels those maternal loving instincts.
That's awesome.
So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
My wife, Jen, says the same thing about her sponsor, you know, Jen's mom passed years back and her sponsor now is just like her mom.
Yeah,
you know?
It's bizarre, and again, I didn't design. That was divinely inspired. That was not, you know, something I made up.
I think a change in sponsorship is something that you'll like. I've changed sponsors, so it's like something that like like I need to move on. Like something's got to change. I've watched that process with a lot of people, and I'm sure you guys have seen it way more times than I have. Just like noticing like this relationship has run its course.
Of course.
Yeah, I gotta make it change. Something's got to change.
I know exactly what you're saying. I relate that to. I used to say like my kids I've never hit my kids, right? Because I was abused physically as a kid, so I've never hit my kids. When I say that, I don't realize that other people in the room, then when I'm saying that is like, well, I have hit my kids. I'm a terrible person. You know? Like that's not what I'm trying to portray here.
Right.
I'm trying to portray that I broke the cycle.
From my family, not you. It has nothing to do with you.
Yeah. So personally, it's funny because I sponsor two guys that are like really close friends. Josh and this other guy, James.
Okay.
And they talk all the time. And when they bounce things off each other, they would literally. They tell me this story, but they would literally say, "Did you ask Dad about that?"
I've told James something before, and it was quiet. Like, I told him some fucked up thoughts I had going
Right.
on, and it was quiet. And he was like, "I'm telling Dad."
Listen, it is, yeah. It's funny how that all works out, isn't it?
Did you like when I got clean? Like, I didn't want to associate with my family, my brothers, my parents, nothing. I was 20. I literally started picking family members out of the rooms.
Yeah,
for sure.
fuck yeah. I found family here too. Yeah.
Me too.
Totally.
And,
Like, I have a family, but like, it's different, you know?
Yeah,
It's different.
you know, well, and for me, as I've gotten older, and like, you know, my dad passed away in 2011, and he was a huge part of like holidays, you know what I mean, and things like that. You know, and so I had to kind of recreate my life, and I recreated it with members of the fellowship. You know,
Yeah.
I started having a Christmas Day, you know, I don't want to say orphans dinner, but like, if you don't have anywhere to go, like, come to my house, it's open,
We
you know.
do Christmas night.
And you do, yeah, exactly. And so, and then Thanksgiving was like every other year was always at my dad's house. And we used to split between my parents because, you know, so the grandkids and all that other stuff and traipsing people around. And the first year after my dad died, or the first Thanksgiving, you know, my mom had moved out of town, and I was like, well, what the hell am I going to, well, I just made Thanksgiving in my house, you know? And so, I have got to pick my family here. And, you know, Kevin, when you said, like, you know, you've never hit your kids, like, sometimes when I say my kids have never seen me loaded, I think that some people kind of internalize that. And it's not, has nothing to do with whether or not they're bad or good parents. It has to do with, you know, I grew up with a dad that was absent from alcoholism, right? Like, and my kids did not have to experience that.
Yeah.
And so
That's exactly my point.
And that's my badge of honor, right?
Yeah.
Everybody gets, you know, somebody's badge of honor could be, I did get loaded, but I was able to, you know, I lost my kids, but then I was able to get them back.
Get 'em back.
And then I was able to raise them for the rest of their life, and I was
Yeah.
clean. So even though they saw the bad, they got to see the good. So the end result was just as good as my end result.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's cool just being able to, like, just from what you guys just said, each of you being able to see how that could potentially affect other people in the rooms and be able to acknowledge that, like, because it could shift the way that you portray that.
Right.
It could even be prefaced with, like, this is just my story and what I'm proud of and what, you know, what resonates with me.
Sure.
Because it can take the power out of it causing harm, you know?
Well, and-
just the ability to see it.
And on the same note as that, you know, I remember in early recovery, my sponsor my first sponsor that I had, that I worked my first 12 with, like, I had up on this pedestal, right?
Yeah.
She got married right around the time I got clean. She got clean when she was 17, and we worked steps together, and then we became really almost enmeshed, like very unhealthy. And she was on this pedestal, and guess what? Her marriage started to fall apart, and things started to happen, and she crashed off that pedestal, and I was devastated and resentful and judgmental, and it really taught me, especially, you know, fast forward to, you know, when I'm getting divorced, that like, we just don't put. There's no NA power couples. There's no, you know, matriarchs in any of this deal. I'm just another. The difference between me and somebody with, you know, a year or 30 days is I just have more life experience, and I've probably done a little more work than they have.
Yeah, you
That's
say
it.
that. I remember. I would say the same thing. I said I've only said no to drugs more days in a row.
Yeah. And with that comes experiences that I get to have that now, today, my whole life is built on. So somebody with 30 days has had 30 days of not putting in one day at a time, and all of the experiences that they've had. And as we add those up, all that gives me is a larger bank of days
Right.
to go back off to and give you my experience.
What is wisdom? Is experience in action? What is that? What is the?
That was just a perception that I had made in my recovery. Was all those times that I failed or I fell short, whatever those disasters were in my life, that I learned from and didn't make that mistake again, I created wisdom.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and if you think
And
about
that's
it,
just one perception.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good one.
It's a great one.
It makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, it's I've got a sponsee right now that is putting so much faith on me as a person. We knew each other in using, and it's so uncomfortable.
I gotta want this.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I look up to you so much. I'm like, fuck.
I'm always like, please don't.
Yeah,
Because I'm gonna fail.
yeah. This is about you, bro. Like this, let's just not use. Don't use.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. It feels weird. It makes me uncomfortable.
It is. And I will say too, like when you think about like at 17 versus at 48 today for me, right? Like I didn't have the life experience at 17. Like nobody was coming to me to ask me how to be a parent.
Yeah.
If you wanted to know how to be, what is that song? A teenage dirtbag. Like I had lots of experience. I could share that with you. If I could share with you how I've stayed clean for 30 days and what I've done, and so fast forward, I go to people. Then when I was in the middle of my divorce, I was going to people that had a similar experience and had some stuff to share. And I talked to people that hadn't gone through it. But that's the beauty, I guess, probably one of the biggest beauties of Narcotics Anonymous is that we all go through different things for different reasons. We all end up in different places. And so if tomorrow I had an experience that come up that nobody in my circle had experienced before, every single one of those people would probably know somebody that I could talk to, or I could talk in a meeting about something and like a phone call away. And so that's the amount of experience that I have today gives me the ability to help somebody else more than it would be when I had 30 days. But it doesn't make me any better.
Yeah, no, I get that. Do you have fears today that, like, I mean, I'm sure we all have fears, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another one too. But answer that one first, please.
Okay.
But before I forget, manifestations like current, like what's fucking you up now? So fears.
Could be a fear.
Could be a fear. Yeah.
A lot of my fear. Okay, so I have a lot of financial fear because it's just me, So I live a lot in what if, and because I want to, I've worked really hard in my life to be, independent, and so now that it's just me and my kids, I always worry. Money was always a worry when I was growing up, and my mom was single and she was struggling, and so I don't want my kids to have that worry. So that's a big fear for me, and it doesn't. Listen, for 2.5 years, I have been doing this on my own, and for all the years prior to that, I was still doing it. You know what I mean? I just had another person that was doing it with me, and I've had better experiences and more experiences letting go, and I have that to fall back on where everything just works out, instead of it's going to be okay, it's already okay, as long as I do the footwork. And so my big struggle, what I'm working on right now is like not being enough or being alone, forever, which is very dramatic and I totally get it, but not being enough and being alone are very intertwined for me. Because either I'm too much for somebody because of all of this baggage that I have, I have this ex-husband, I have these kids, I have, all this other like internal baggage that I'm going to be too much for somebody and I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. And the truth is that even if I was, it's still okay, and so
I don't even have kids and I feel like that.
And a lot of my fears often are just ridiculous ideas that either were planted when I was a kid, or I'll do a comparison. Comparison is the thief of joy, right? Like I'll look at your life, or I'll look at your life, and I'll be like, look at everything that they have, and look at all the things that they've accomplished, and all of a sudden I'm the worst of the worst, and I'm not a good parent, and I'm not a good this, and I'm not a good member of NA,
But you're not actually looking inside us, right?
Exactly.
And seeing the dead, wilting heart.
Your black soul.
All you see is the house and the goats and the chickens
and that comes from
Or the war going on right here.
But for me, it's
Yeah.
that external piece of, and I'm telling you, man, that the childhood stuff that I have, I think to myself sometimes, like, is this ever going to go away? And the truth is deeply ingrained in who I am as a person, because it's where my foundation started growing up. So as I lessen my desire to focus on that area, there are still times when it pops up. So, right, I'm looking at the exterior because I was grown up that the exterior what was important, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I stop and I say, that's a message that I got growing up, it's not the message that I live today, I can stop and say, Kevin and Jen are the neatest people in the entire world, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that you have goats and chickens and donkeys. You know, it has everything to do with who you are as a people, and I get to have a relationship with you guys and have the gifts of going and coming up and seeing all that stuff.
I was going to say the same thing about you.
Really?
Just like it's not being divorced. It's not anything on that scale. It's
Right.
like you talking about your own self-worth and self-esteem. Look around at your friends and how they think of you and how they feel about you, and that should give you a good indication of where you're at.
Yeah.
Because like your circle loves you.
Yeah, they're pretty rad.
Yeah.
And it's hard to internalize that stuff sometime. And when
Yeah, it is.
And when I think
Difficult.
right, well, and some of my circle has been around since day one for me. You know, when I talk about like Dan and Ruth and they've known me since I was 17, and they're still, you know what I mean? They're still my people,
And they still love you,
and they still love me, and they're the people that showed up for me. Like when I needed a place to live. You know, when my husband and I ex-husband separated, I lived with them for 3 months until we got everything sorted out. Like I totally invaded their space and their life, and they were happy to have me there. And like nobody, not a soul wanted anything to do with me when I got here.
Yeah.
You know.
So do I mean, is it easy for you to get to that spot where you like internalize?
Depends on my spiritual condition.
Yeah.
Depends on what I'm doing. You know, for myself, it depends on if I'm doing my 11th step every day. If I'm.
Do you?
I did not do it today.
I mean, is that how you get to your spiritual connection or spiritual
Often.
condition? Is your
Often.
11th step?
Yeah, you know, I wake up early enough to give myself time to pray, meditate. I read the language of letting go that my sponsor gave me. I journal. I moderate the Facebook page for the Anonymous podcast. And so I get to check in on that and see what, you know what I mean? That's just part of me being a service, like in a different, realm. And so I do all of those things in the morning when I get up, and I intentionally give myself the time. It's not like I wake up and I give myself enough time to get ready for work. Like I give myself an hour before. And so that really allows my spiritual condition to be set before I even have to deal with any bullshit of the day, before I have to wake up my son to go to school and he gripes at me. You know what I mean? Before, and then, I talk to at least 2 addicts a day, even if it's just like a quick hello or sometimes it's by text. Sometimes it's like, hey, I love you. I hope you have a great day from somebody. Sometimes it's a phone call from a sponsee. But I'm going to a lot more meetings these days too, because I have the time. And so, I'm getting fed in that way, and I'm going to different meetings too, not the ones that I feel comfortable in, that I can just sit in the background and just be, like meetings that have different people that I don't know really well, and going out afterwards and doing that kind of stuff, which is all stuff I did when I was new. But when you get a life and you're a parent and you know what I mean? Like for years, I didn't get to do that kind of stuff because I was busy doing that. And so I'm kind of like doing that all over again. And I read something the other day, and it was something about like, growth and comfort don't live, I can't remember what it was. It was basically about growing and being uncomfortable. Like you can't be comfortable and growing like at the same time, right? Like,
right. Yeah. There's always something that's going to be worked on.
Correct. And so it's like,
especially for people like us,
if I get too comfortable, my
gets
disease
weird.
and my disease manifests itself in some strange
in our
ways.
literature? Right? In NA's literature is like
Complacency.
complacency is the killer of those with long-term
recovery, clean time, yeah.
defects, where are they showing up? What's the current manifestation?
So I say this often, Kevin's heard me say it 1,000 times, like control is my favorite drug in Narcotics Anonymous, right? It's been a long process. It is the immediate first, still to this day, after all these years, my first step in, like, when something happens, my immediate response is to control it. If I can somehow make this, go my way.
It's less scary.
It's less scary. So control, I think probably secondary to that would be
Where's control showing up?
relationships.
Different tiers of relationships.
Different tiers of relationship. Yeah, either with my kids, romantically, even in terms of, like, with my family. My mom has, her mental faculties are deteriorating, and so there's this whole idea of how it should be handled, and I want to step in and be the arbiter of that. And it's not my job. She's married, she has a husband. Really, in all realms, that's his responsibility. When my dad was sick, I was in control of all of it. His care, I advocated for him. He lived with me. We managed his medication. We did all that other stuff. And it needed to be that way at the time. And so for me, it wasn't control. It was out of necessity. But I do tend to step in often in realms where I'm not needed and where I should most likely be offering my help versus stepping in and taking over. Do
you is this something that you practice today to combat that, is to say, I'm not in charge?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of stay in your lane, Jennifer.
Oh, stay in your lane.
Not
yeah.
my circus, not my monkeys. It's another one. Also, giving unsolicited advice. Not even unsolicited, but my opinion versus my experience, which
That's so. You reading It Works Hanway in that 11 step, it says exactly that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because my sponsor has me do years ago. She started having me do this thing. She said, when a thought pops in your head, stop and make like you have a lock on your mouth and twist it just long enough for you to think about, does it need to be said?
Yeah.
And it works about
game changer.
60% of the time.
That's a high percentage.
Yeah.
That's a really high percentage. That's good.
Well, I've been practicing it for like 15 years, so you'd think it would be at least 90 at this point.
letting people be people. Like, the control ties into that for me. For a long time, I wanted to control all of the people around me.
Right.
So that I felt safe. Like, if you're not doing what feels safe to me, I'm going to try and convince you that you need to do it a different way.
I think what I've found most lately and reacting to my feelings, and my sponsor helped me identify this, I feel threatened. My security feels threatened. I feel threatened that you're going to abandon me. I feel threatened. It's all feeling threatened. And so I get into the you shoulds. You, as opposed to I can speak the same thing to you without making it about you. I could tell you, I love you. I see addiction, affecting your life in a certain way, and I'm scared and I'm scared because I don't want you to hurt. You know what I mean? Instead of saying you shouldn't do this because blah,
you
blah, blah,
make
blah,
me
blah.
feel this way,
or you make me, or I feel this way because you're doing, and when I this has been a real, when it comes to relationships in general, any relationship, how I deliver a message or information to somebody based on how they communicate versus how I communicate, because I'm wordy and I go on and
It's
on
good
and on.
insight.
Yeah, I go on and on and on, and some people need very direct communication, and so I've learned that having this piece of delivering information in a way that you can hear it, as opposed to the way that I think you should hear it, has really been, even with my kids, and my son is a good example. 2 weeks ago, like right before Labor Day on a Friday, he woke up and said, I'm not going to school. I was like, on a Friday, like, you've been in school for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or something. What do you mean you're not going to school? Which, first of all, don't tell me what you're going to do, right? Like, I'm the mom. And I started to get very, right?
You're righteous.
Very self-righteous. And, I could hear my voice go up. I could hear, like, my head was getting hot. Like, I was getting angry. It's like 7:30 in the morning. And I say to him, and I start going on, and then I stopped. And I said, okay, check it out. we're on the heels of a 3-day weekend. It's a Friday. If you don't go to school, then that takes away all your weekend plans. And in my head, I'm thinking, if you're grounded all weekend, that means I'm fucking grounded all weekend because I got to stay home and make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. But you know, I'm a mom. That's my job. That's what I do. So I said it, and I said, then no friends over this weekend, no in or out. You're not going out. Nobody's coming in. And it's a 3-day weekend, bro. Like, so make your decision, figure it out. And he grumbled and he was really mad. And I don't feel good and this and that. And I was like, you don't feel good because you either didn't go to bed, you didn't do, you know what I mean? Whatever it is, for whatever the reasons are. But you're not sick. You know, like, I clearly know that you're not sick. And so he went back in his room about an hour and a half later, and he went to school late. He was up, he was dressed, he had his backpack on, and he said, he was, I think, like an hour late for school. And he said, can you give me a ride? And I said, nope. And you made your choices. If you would have said, I don't feel good, but I'm going to go to school anyways, I would have happily put you in the car. Now, it's an 8-minute walk to the school from my house, so it's not far, but I still would have driven him. And I said no. But he went and he did his work, and he said, will you call and excuse my tardies? And I said, nope, you can have those consequences, but you got up and you went to school, so you can have your weekend plans. So the next time he says, I don't want to go to school, I'll be like, same thing goes. So my hope is that, but I didn't have to say, you're a bad kid. Why don't you do this? I hate it when you do this to me. It's, it doesn't make it about me.
That's an interesting lesson. That's, I learned that with my 3 kids is like,
I'm so glad I don't have kids.
yeah.
I'm so grateful that I don't have kids.
Have kids, they say it'll be fun.
You can, you can do this, and this is the consequence.
Right.
If you want this, I need you to do this.
Right. It's like the carrot or the stick. It's like, yeah.
Same thing in sponsees. A lot of times we learn that we could treat our children like sponsees.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Are you sure you want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. It's true though.
I think also with sponsees too, there's always this really kind of cool place where it's like, okay, I've sponsored you for a while. Like, I know you. It's like, I'm not going to tell you what to do because it's not my job, but I can tell you about yourself. You know what I mean? Like let's talk about the last time. Exactly. And so instead of telling you what to do, this sounds oddly familiar. I feel like I say that a lot to my sponsees. This is a familiar story. And so I think for both, I mean, with parenting and sponsoring, I think they interchange for me. And I think I've probably learned to be a better parent from being a sponsor.
Same, both
and
ways.
Vice versa, you know?
Yeah.
And especially as my kids get older, right? Like, I clearly don't. Well, I mean, I've had sponsees that I feel like I've had to treat like toddlers because they act like toddlers sometimes. I did. I mean, I was a big stomp my feet, I'm not getting my way, call crying dramatic to my sponsor. And she'd be like, are you going to get high? And no. All right, well, we're going to talk about this later. You know what I mean? Like, this is not important enough for a middle of the night phone call,
Very cool. Well, I was going to ask you if you're willing. Josh and I both thought maybe we can have you back as like a guest host sometime.
Yeah, I would love that.
And we can grill somebody else.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
We really appreciate you coming out and doing this podcast with us. And we
it's a great
totally appreciate your experience in the podcast world.
Yeah, of course.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's nice to get to know you a little more.
Same.
Yeah.
This has been great.
All right. Well, that wraps it up for today, and I look forward to having you back.
For sure.
Thanks very
Jim.
much.